This week, on the latest episode of The Big Show, we conclude our spotlight on National Book Month as we close with Alice Walker's classic novel, The Color Purple. Charles Kirkland and I will talk about this 11-time Oscar-nominated film directed by Steven Spielberg, which launched the film careers of both Whoopi Goldberg and Oprah Winfrey. Plus, show correspondent Wilson Morales will join us momentarily to recap the week in entertainment. And we'll have reviews, finally, of a movie I didn't get a chance to review last week, The Trial of Chicago 7, and Netflix Over the Moon, all on episode 423 of Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. Let's go. All right, and welcome to the latest episode of The Big Show, Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. I am Tim Gordon. Charles Kirkland is riding shotgun with me. What's going on, brother Chuck?
Hey, Tim, I'm glad to be here today. It's a wonderful day in the neighborhood.
Oh man! And later on the next show that we're gonna do, which Charles is just finding out right now, we're gonna, we were at the Middleburg Film Festival virtually last week. Charles, how many films did you get a chance to see last week at the festival?
I want to say I had it was 7 films.
Seven. I saw 12. So we're going to talk movies. The ones we're going to review on the show today, of course, are a couple that are running on Netflix right now. The Trial of Chicago 7, which is a brilliant film by Aaron Sorkin, and then the animated film Over the Moon, which I think we'll talk about. Did you see Wolf Walkers at Middleburg?
No, I did not.
Oh my God, Wolf Walkers is great.
And it's funny because I told you I wanted to see it and I didn't get a chance to see it, and I guess you saw it because I told you it was supposed to be good. So
yeah, well, it's funny. So they contacted me about it, and I didn't really know what it was. And when it was at Middleburg in their lineup, I had a chance to read about it, so I was like, "Ooh, let me check it out." My favorite from last year was a movie that Netflix put out called Claws, which I think, did it win the Oscar last year for Best Animated Film? I know it was nominated. So Claws was really good. This movie, Wolf Walkers, which we're talking about, which is on the festival circuit now and it has not been released. I'm trying to put that in context with Over the Moon, which we're going to talk a little bit about later on. Also last week, in addition to the Middleburg Film Festival, was also the final episode of season 1 or series finale of, we don't know yet, of Lovecraft Country, which we actually did our show last week and had both Shireen, Nicole, and Julian Lytle on talking about last week. Man, Charles, when he said, "Did you bind my magic? Not just you, all the white people in the world." Magic is ours now. I was like, wow. Coldest line of the series, man. That was great. So Lovecraft Country last week, it was a big week. Both you and I, you had some personal stuff you were dealing with this week. My personal thing was work, where I was overwhelmed. So it's good to be sitting back in the host chair doing entertainment kind of stuff again. I put a shirt on for you. We've been collaring up, man, trying to step our game up as we get closer to election day, because as Sam Cooke said, a change is going to come. And also, look, go ahead. And I was just saying,
we pray.
And also, as the great Bob Dylan once sang, times they are a changing. There you go.
There you go.
So without any further ado, man, I think it's time, man, that we go up to New York, man, and bring in our dude who gives us the weekly rundown on entertainment and see what kind of setup he has in his house, because this is always our running joke. Oh, yeah. His Moroccan curtain game is on fleek, man. From blackfilmandtv.com, as well as Wilson Morales Movies. It is Wilson Morales. I always get confused because I want to say Wilson Morales Films, but if I say Wilson Morales Films, I almost feel like you're a producer.
No, bottom line, it's Wilson. It's Black Film and TV. My Instagram is Black Film and TV, which is the same as everything else. My personal IG is Wilson Morales Film, because there's one too many Wilson Morales out there and have to.
Are they really?
Apparently so. There's a couple of them out there. So the only way for people to know exactly who I am is when you throw the word film in there, they'll know who's who.
Man, I thought as far as our universe, there's only one Wilson Morales. Just like there's a bunch
Only
of people
one.
named Tim Gordon out there. There's only one Tim Gordon.
I thought I was the one and only, but apparently there's another universe.
All right, Wilson. So this was a big week, man, in film. We'll lead off with the quick demise of Quibi. What happened, bruh? Quibi wasn't even 6 months in the game, and they already gone.
Here's the thing, and I've done interviews for some of the Quibi shows that they've aired. The problem with that is, they had a big launch money for April 6th. Things were, they were setting it up. It was a month in. When we talk about March, the pandemic hit in March. Its whole game plan was you can watch a 5 to 10 minute episode while you're standing online, while you're at the train tracks waiting for a train, while you're at the airport waiting to lift off. You can catch an episode, and then because we're so busy, you don't mind seeing 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, and so forth. But when the quarantine happened and you're now home without moving anywhere, it's a little frustrating to watch one episode and then having to wait a whole 24 hours for another 10-minute episode or 5 minutes, however short it may be, when you can watch a whole season of any series in a span of one day, as opposed to waiting 24 hours for another 7 minutes. And then it would only give you new episodes for 5 days of the week. So on weekends, you wouldn't be able to get that new episode. You'd have to wait the following Monday. So that was a failed formula, and considering the fact that, you had no theaters and people are still home, and a lot of streaming platforms have greatly benefited from Netflix and Hulu to Apple Plus, where people are seeing a full-length series, a film. The waiting game of 5 minutes here and there it just didn't work in their cards. It's like no one has patience, especially when you can't beat the Netflix model when they're just giving you all the episodes. And other streaming platforms have started to follow that same suit. To be a weekly series on cable takes a lot of money, to promote per episode. And some series have benefited, like Insecure, like Power Ghost, where, talent are discovered week after week, like Lovecraft Country, So, the good thing about, Quibi is that, Lawrence Fishburne and Jasmine Cephas Jones were able to get Emmy Awards and nominations for its short run of Quibi. It was just too expensive to hold up, and not enough people are downloading it because no one's home. You're home, you rather watch something that's on TV. And that's another thing. Quibi didn't set it up for you to watch at home, so it's like the last thing you want to do is kind of sit on, watching stuff on your phone where you can cast everything on your TV and, that's it.
Right.
They've had shows, but, the marketing wasn't there and they weren't getting its audience, as much as they should be.
Right. No, I was going to say, now the second big story of the week, and we're still reeling from it. It's almost a week now. Lovecraft Country's finale was phenomenal. You got a chance to watch it. I didn't follow it live on Twitter, man, but people went crazy over that finale last week. I know there was some mixed because, it wasn't, everybody has an interpretation when they watch a show that they wanted to give them a certain thing. And I think the overall arcing theme of what they did in season one, I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. What was your takeaway, and not just of what you thought about the show, but again, HBO stepping up for the second year in a row with what I call is a must-see show. Like last year, we saw the Watchmen come along and sweep the Emmys with Regina King and Yahya Abdul Mateen and others stepping into that breach. What about Lovecraft Country? What did you think about that final episode, the season, and the cultural phenomenon that it became?
It was a lot to grasp pay attention to kind of put it together. You know, you certainly had to have been a fan from get-go to kind of get like everything that was going on per episode. Every episode was a wild ride, you know, a little bit of education, a little bit not, you know. That's the beauty about this series, is that like, for a series that primarily has an African-American cast, you know, it's not an easy 1, 2, 3, you know where it's going to go, you know, and you kind of need that, you know. Not everything has to be so predictable,
right?
You know, it's mixed opinion. Hey, that's great, you know, because it adds to the conversation. It gets people interested in saying, let me check it out again. Let me go back to it. People are talking about it. Let me get into it, you know. I don't know if they're going to keep this as, I think they should probably keep it as an anthology series and just do something different, but bring back the whole cast. I don't know how do you go with a season 2 on this, you know. Stories were resolved. But if you keep it as an anthology series, which is what everybody's doing nowadays, and Ryan Murphy has, you know, successfully done this, you know, people will be excited to see this whole cast back again.
Well, you know, it's funny you would talk about that. I read an article that's on the front page, I think, of Hollywood Reporter this week about Chandra Rhimes, and, you know, the debut of her show that's going to be launching in the next, I don't know, next several months. But, you know, it talked about her being the most expensive showrunner, a 9-figure deal that she got from Netflix as a creator. Now, Ryan Murphy got $300 million, and she's saying they're still saying that her deal exceeded Ryan Murphy's. We living in a vast land right now. I mean, I read, and I'm sure you saw it as well, Wilson, that there was talk about, you know, United Artists or them selling the James Bond 25th film on No Time to Die, and the bidding was as high as $600 million, man. We heard about Eddie Murphy's film, Coming to America 2, going for $125. So, I mean, we're experiencing something really new and different, Wilson, and the industry is changing right before our very eyes. What are you thinking about these phenomenons and what we're seeing, the evolution in this kind of post-pandemic putting back together of Hollywood?
Here's the thing. Eddie Murphy's movie, Coming to America 2, or Coming to America, sold for $125, which is actually not bad considering that, like, you know, it could have, that's the amount of money you could have foreseen that it would make at the box office. We don't know how it would have done internationally. James Bond, knowing that this is the 25th, the last film starring Daniel Craig, and, you know, they've been going up in terms of its box office, could have potentially made $1 billion. So they're looking at it from the standpoint as, you know, which is why a lot of the studios are electing to go next year into theaters, because they know what they can make out of this. You know, they know they can make a lot of money out of this, and they don't want to, you know, get short, you know, they don't want to lose money by going on the streaming platforms, and you're not going to make any money out of it. If you sell for $600 million, that's the, at least in their eyes, that's the minimum they think they could have made, as opposed to, like, you make nothing out of it, you know. In terms of Shonda Rhimes and Ryan Murphy getting those deals, obviously Ryan has been successful. His shows, Sandra's had Grey's Anatomy on for a number of years. She had Private Practice for 6 years. The other shows are kind of coming along. She's had a few failures, don't get me wrong. There's been a series here or there, but nevertheless, she's, between Scandal and How to Get Away with Murder, she's created successful shows. So the money is a tribute to what they've done. At the end of the day, you know, longevity is sometimes what matters, because you still need those shows to not only come on, but last long enough. You know, if it's a one-time series, you got to be really, really good. You know, otherwise these days, airing 2 seasons and that's it. You know, you don't want to get lost because you have bad ratings. You know, you want to go along. And, you know, granted, nowadays, it's hard for a show, unless you're CBS, which pretty much renews 80% of their shows. Most of these shows on network television, when you talk about ABC, Fox, and NBC, they don't last 10 seasons, you know, unless you're a big-time producer like a Shonda Rhimes, you are as successful as Dick Wolf has been with the Law and Orders and the Chicago series. He's been very successful. Like I said, CBS, they live off those procedural dramas and they do well. Everywhere else, trying to create something new, you're living in this world where there are now a gazillion channels and you're fighting for every audience you can get, and it's either a good enough show that you have a loyal fan base that you don't have to do so much like CBS does with their series, or you're going to have to fight every other time, depending on what day you're airing,
right.
To come on. Like you can get a big bump the first season, but eventually you start tapering off. Prime example is Empire. They had probably the greatest first season that any show has ever had, but then they dropped and it's now over after 6 seasons, and they ended obviously before they got to air their real finale, Pandemic, whereas shows like on CBS, Hawaii Five-0 ended after 11 seasons, and I'm like, I barely saw 5 of them, but they had 11, 20 plus seasons, 20 plus episodes per season. At the end of the day, How to Get Away with Murder I don't think they even averaged 20 episodes a season. They would have those long breaks in between, mid-season returns and stuff like that. TV's not easy. And even when you have shows on Netflix, those are hard because maybe you guys know more. I don't know, with the exception of Orange is the New Black. It's lasted at least 7 seasons on streaming channels.
So you're right, man. Think about it. You think about highly successful shows. Sopranos did 7 years. Mad Men did 7 years. Television is hard. When you're talking about getting to 10 and 11 seasons, man, I think there's a certain quality that gets watered down, man. No disrespect, man. Like when you watch a show like Grey's Anatomy was always a show that was built as an ensemble show, so it wasn't, or ER back in the day. These kind of medical shows that are these shows where you have these huge casts. It's a lot easier to maintain a show like that for over a longer period of time than it is to try to maintain a show with like a single star. So like Lovecraft Country is a great analogy because Lovecraft Country had a book as its source material. Game of Thrones was another one that had a book as its source material. So once you get past the book and then you have to start creating stuff new, you run into the problem that Game of Thrones ran into of trying to figure out how do we stay true to the characters that we created, but give the characters a brand new story that kind of works. And you saw all the grousing around the end, the last 6 episodes of Game of Thrones. So you're right, Wilson. I agree with you. Television is hard, and the people who do it well, Ryan Murphy, Shonda Rhimes, Tyler Perry. The people who do it well are able to come up with a formula, and then Dick Wolf churn stuff out year after year after year, man. So
I just want to add one thing.
I guess my point to you sort of answered the question. I'm talking about how our industry is evolving. We talked last week about how Disney is now going to put more of an emphasis on their Disney Plus side because they have a place to put the movies where they already have in-house marketing and they can get their product out to subscribers. Netflix is built up to 200 million right now. Peacock, Universal Service, they're trying to build that up. So I see that we are going to be at least another, I would think, 6 to 12 months of this. That this stuff is not going away anytime soon, Wilson. So
as of now, you see they say the pandemic is, at least the cases are starting to rise again, which is, at the same time they say, oh, people are starting to go back to theaters, but at a very, very limited capacity. I can't see any parent that's willing to take a group of kids or somebody else's kids to go see an animated film,
right?
And not be insured. As much as we want theaters to come back, we've now spent more than 6 months being comfortable at our homes watching these movies, which is why Disney. So on Disney Plus, we're like, listen, for the amount of money we can make out of that, and the average person coming to the see this movie is going to be 3+ individuals. Thinking about parents and kids, it's like we're not going to get them. We're entering the fall season. You don't know how soon the vaccine can come and who's going to be the guinea pig to try it out and say, "Oh, I'm good." We don't know yet. So for the foreseeable future, right now, and I'm sure, this is it's everything's evolving, as you mentioned, for a time. Like this is, you have to pivot and say, okay, this is where we're at now. All these channels are now coming up there, and there's a glut. And what I was trying to say, going back to, the money, you think about Friends and how at one point every cast member was getting $1 million per episode. That was at a time when you didn't have 300 channels and had huge ratings, and it justified that. I can't see a whole cast, 7 people getting $1 million each when those ratings are no longer the same as it is.
Dude.
It's like,
also,
and you look at Charles.
I also was going to say that the selling of the James Bond film, No Time to Die, speaks to the idea of what's happening in next year, in that, you could get $1 billion on this film, but if it's stuck in the middle of blockbusters that have been pushed from this year into,
that's another good point.
You may not be able to get that same amount of money.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's like, we got to also remember, the thing about overseas films, China in particular, China doesn't take every big movie. I think I don't know the rule or anything, but I think they're only allowed to take maybe up to 15 American films, and they're generally going to go after movies that they know are going to be big blockbusters. So as much as there is a glut in the American theaters for all these movies out there, a lot of them won't get that same play in China. So there's no telling if they'll take a Coming to America, knowing it's a predominantly black film. If China says, it's one thing you bring in Black Panther and it's got the Marvel signature with it, but we don't know. I don't know what the numbers were for Bad Boys 2 if it played in China. Somebody has to do the research and say, okay, what's the biggest black film that's done well in China outside of Black Panther? So take that away. And so if you're going to play in the United States, you're going to be competing week after week. But a film like James Bond will do well overseas because a lot of these movies that get played in the States are not going to get the same treatment overseas.
All right. So, Wilson, we talked earlier that you have an anniversary you want to tell us about. And, as the man who loves as the man who loves New Jack City and so much about black film, tell us about this new anniversary that's coming up and why should we care about this one?
Well, I wouldn't say care, every year, obviously, just recently, you can look at any day of the weekend. It's like, okay, how old is this movie? We're home and we're watching films, and basically, if you've not watched a lot of films in your career or in your life, if you haven't gone to the theaters, there's that statement, everything old is new again. So there's a whole new discovery of films for a lot of people who are now home on a regular basis. One such film is Crush Groove, which made its debut 35 years ago, directed by Michael Schultz, and introduced the world to Blair Underwood, LL Cool J, and especially for a lot of people who at the time heard them on the radio but didn't physically see them. So you also had Sheila E., Run DMC, rest in peace, Andre Harrell, Lisa Gay, I think Lisa Gay Hamilton, so there was and it had a hip hop, and this is when hip hop was just starting out, so it's definitely been one of the successful films. I don't know about critically, but definitely like amongst black audiences.
I'm smiling because I saw Crush Groove in the theaters when it first came out. Well, let me look at my hair. Is it gray up in there? Man.
You're telling on yourself.
Hey, bro. Wilson, you didn't see Crush Groove in the theaters, man?
I don't know if I was born yet. I'm just kidding.
I hate Wilson so much, man. Wilson, last month I see that you forgot to mention the 25th anniversary of The Color Purple. I'm sorry, that wasn't the 35th anniversary of Color Purple. That was released in '85 too. My apologies. So a lot of people.
December?
No, that was end of September of '85.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, The Color Purple.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Devil in the Blue Dress was September, the end of September of 1995. So, you know, I'm about to lose my credit card because if I get that wrong, you can't, you know, those are not the same year. Color Purple is 85. Devil in the Blue Dress was 95.
And are we sure about the September date?
That's what it's, unless Wikipedia is wrong. I mean, that's what it said on Wiki.
You know, I was like, I don't think so. It's like the Color Purple film, because I would think that knowing.
No, I didn't say the Color Purple. I'm saying Devil in the Blue Dress. The Color Purple was much later in the year.
So we're talking about the 25th anniversary of Devil in the Blue Dress.
Devil in the Blue Dress, yes. Walter Mosley, you know, Don Cheadle, who should have got an Oscar nomination for Mouse. So it's interesting that because we're going to talk about the Color Purple in a little bit. I mean, I didn't know if you had any comments on the Color Purple because, again, if you were too young to see Crush Groove in theaters, you sure enough was too young to see the Color Purple in theaters.
Yeah, well, the Color Purple debuted on December 18th.
Yeah.
19, you know, so I just want to make sure, because I knew that, because knowing it was nominated for so many Oscars, my assumption is that it got released during an Oscar period, and it wouldn't, and the September release date is too early. Now, Devil in the Blue Dress is a different story. So when you think about like Don Cheadle should have gotten a nomination, a lot of this is all politics. When you come out early in September, you know, you can get a buzz, but, you know you've got an onslaught of films coming out in October, November, December, unless there's a lot, the buzz keeps growing and growing in terms of like the movie's doing well at the box office and there's nothing in between. And Don Cheadle was, I wouldn't say fairly new, but, you know, he was a kind of like a newcomer to a lot of people. You need a lot, you know, to come out there and be like, oh, you know, he was that striking.
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting you would say that because when you think about the Color Purple, man, you know, it was a critically acclaimed national bestseller, right? Yeah. You bring in Quincy Jones, you bring in Steven Spielberg in order to produce this thing. You know, Quincy brings in this young comedian who had just won a Tony on Broadway, Whoopi Goldberg, who a lot of people didn't know. Oprah Winfrey was still, she was an unknown. She was a talk show host making her film debut. Margaret Avery was an actor who had done work in the 70s, but wasn't really a known commodity. You had young, what's her name, who played Shug Avery? Ray Don Chong, who had been in Commando and Quest for Fire and a cop. So the Color Purple, and you also had Danny Glover. And I want to say, Charles, is this pre the films he started, the series he did with
Mel Gibson, Lethal Weapon?
Mel Gibson's Lethal Weapon,
This is pre-Lethal Weapon, right? When Danny Glover shows up to do the Color Purple. I want to say this is pre.
I think it is.
I don't think Lethal Weapon started before 1985. So I'm thinking it's pre. I could be wrong. But I think Danny Glover was somebody that people knew.
No, I think Lethal Weapon was out before that.
Lethal Weapon was out before 1985? Was it really?
I think so. I'll have to check on it.
Yeah, somebody check on that. But I'm just saying that The Color Purple is one of those movies, when you talk about the politics of Oscar, this is really a movie that fell prey to the politics of Oscar because here's a good example. Wilson, what won Best Picture the year that Color Purple was nominated? What won Best Picture? Anybody, Charles, do you know?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Out of Africa. Out of Africa, if you ask anybody today who's a film critic, a film aficionado, Out of Africa has got to be one of the most, I don't know, I'm not going to say forgotten Best Picture winners, but nobody would consider Out of Africa like a classic today. The Color Purple.
The movie made $225 million at the box office. You know, that's nothing to sneeze about, you know.
Okay, watch this. Okay, and my point is when is the last time you've been around and you were at a dinner party and somebody said, man, you know, I saw Out of Africa again. It came on last night. That movie, never. I've heard people talk about Raging Bull, Taxi Driver, Mean Streets, Jaws, I mean, there any length of movies that are a part of the canon. I've never been at a party and somebody said, "Man, you know what? I was checking out Shakespeare in Love last night. Man, that movie never happens, Wilson. That's what I'm trying to tell you. There's
There are movies that stand the test of time
yes,
over and over again. And then there are movies that do well for its particular year, that they won. And for that moment in time, we talk about it like, oh, it's good for now.
right,
How long it lasts. And that all goes to who does well. Like you think about it, like you said, it's Color Purple. Whoopi Goldberg became a star afterwards, started to get in leading roles. So the more they do, that cast, the more this Color Purple stands out. Danny Glover, as we mentioned, became a bigger name once he started doing the Lethal Weapon series.
right.
Spielberg was doing bigger and bigger films from there. He started, obviously, he was still doing the big blockbusters. Oprah Winfrey, I'm saying, still stayed in mainstream, and she had her talk show, as opposed to, you looking out of Africa, Robert Redford does movies here and there. Meryl Streep still was getting like top-notch films. It didn't have that big of a cast outside of The Color Purple. For the same reasons we talk about The Best Man, because that cast is still working today.
Right.
So when you have a film where its cast doesn't do a lot, but every now and then, as opposed to you look at the cast of The Color Purple, Whoopi's still, out there on The View. If Whoopi was not on The View, today's millennial will be like, I don't know who she is. Obviously, I didn't.
No,
like,
I mean, but this is a good conversation, Wilson. It's like I think back. You and I are both guys who kind of, and Charles to a certain extent, because Charles never seen The Godfather, so there's a certain amount that you've got to take.
I've never seen The Godfather all the way through. I've seen The Godfather, not all the way through.
Here's the comparison. You look at. I'm going to compare this to the NBA, where LeBron just won the championship, and millennials know LeBron. They've watched him play, and over the summer, a whole brand new audience got to be introduced to Michael Jordan.
Right.
Because prior to the documentary, the 10-part documentary, none of these stations were airing the old games. They weren't airing them. It's not like you can watch Game 6 of any of his championship runs. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
People talk about, I got to get the Jordan. People don't understand the context. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, it's like Jordans are still a hot commodity. I don't see anybody talking about, I got to get the LeBrons. It's a whole different story. Now, granted, they're each different, and before Jordan, people were talking about Wilt Chamberlain, and they were talking about Bill Russell. Everybody has its hero during its time period. Jordan was great, but who could beat Bill Russell's dominance during the Boston years?
Right.
And then like I said, then it comes Jordan. Then it comes LeBron because of the fact that every team he played, he's been able to go to the championship. Every time period is going to have a new hero. So like, so and comparing that to Color Purple, you look at if none of those actors or talent, let's just say, Whoopi Goldberg and Oprah Winfrey weren't as big as they are now, not many people will be paying attention to the Color Purple. Look at Meryl Streep, but like Meryl Streep has gone on to do a great number of films.
17-time Oscar nominee.
You can't pinpoint. You're like, oh, Oscar Out of Africa, which is where she lost again. I'm not. Yeah. Robert Redford. It's like, okay, he doesn't work as hard as I would say hard. He doesn't work as frequent as Meryl.
Right.
And Sidney Pollack. Sidney Pollack did a few films. He did a number of films, but like, think about it. That's it. Because they've had a lot more to do. This is one in their canon.
So let's talk about The Color Purple, because it also featured Lawrence Fishburne, who played a piano player. It also featured, I was trying to think, the late great Adolph Caesar, who really shined in A Soldier Story. So here's a movie where about, Alice Walker's book. I read the book before I saw the movie, which is a thing that as a critic that I always say I hate to do, because the book will always be superior to the movie. But in this case, Steven Spielberg creates this story that, kind of spotlights, Celie, played by Whoopi Goldberg, and this abusive relationship she's in with Mr., played by Danny Glover. And I just thought, I remember seeing this movie, Wilson. I was in New York one weekend. This is a true story. I was walking down in Times Square, and I walked by a theater, and the guy was like, "You want to check out this movie? We'll pay you $5 a watch because we need you to fill out a comment card." So I was like, "Bet." So they didn't tell us what the movie was. We went inside in The Color Purple. It was an advanced screening of The Color Purple. And I remember at the end, by the time getting to the end, when you see them kind of like doing their thing in the garden with all of the purple, I was crying and stuff. I'm a young kid. I'm like 21 years old, man. I fill out this card. I write these wonderful comments. And then I tell people, I saw The Color Purple, man. It's this good movie before it came out. And then it became this 11-time Oscar nominee, which to this day is tied with The Turning Point from 1977 as the most nominated film to not win one Oscar. And I truly believe if that movie had never come out and Spielberg assembled a cast of actors today in order to do that movie, and he got 11 nominations, it would have won about 4 of those. But there was some politics with Spielberg at the time because that was his really first serious movie, because this came after Jaws and Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. So there was still a lot of skepticism around who Steven Spielberg was. And then we would find out years later, by the time he gets to Schindler's List in 92, 93, he's the Spielberg that we know now as this kind of multi-dimensional, he can make these kind of fantasy films, but he also does Lincoln, and he also does The Color Purple and Schindler's. So this was really, The Color Purple for Spielberg, this was really kind of a first step to the evolution of him as an artist, showing the type of director that he would later be. Saving Private Ryan, you know, so a lot of this started with The Color Purple, man. So Wilson, any context, or Charles, any context on that?
No, I would say, like, you know, you put it that perspective. Yes, you know, I think people use or look at Spielberg, or he's the Hollywood guy churning out like these fluff movies that didn't go out the box office. You know, you got a number of them that do well at the box office.
He did fantastic at the box office.
Like, you know, you got guys who are like, it's like, I wouldn't put like this, and no disrespect. He's not like it's Michael Bay. You know, Michael Bay does these like Bad Boys and Transformers, you know, and then when Michael Bay does a super serious movie, you're like, I don't know, let's wait and see. You know, you flip it like that, you know, so I think.
When has Michael Bay done a serious movie? What serious movies he ever done?
You know what? 13 hours. The 13 hours is kind of serious. You know,
Okay,
it was an action movie, but it was also serious.
Yeah. Okay, I got you.
You know, so like, you know, it takes a lot for some of these directors who are looked at one way to turn the corner and say, like, even when you look at Green Book, the director of Green Book, they're like, you mean the guy who did something about Harry and you're going to nominate him for an Oscar for doing this, you know? Or you look at Daddy Boyle, who had done Trainspotting, and all of a sudden he does Slumdog Millionaire. You know, it's like, you know, sometimes, you know, you have to sway people around. Even actors, you know, like how many actors, you know, comedians make the best actors, but it takes a lot to sway these people to say, oh, I remember, I think last year when you had Adam Sandler and Eddie Murphy in the running, and I think the Hollywood Reporter ran like this story that they do every year, where they interview voters anonymously and talk about, like, you know, who do you vote for? And they're like, Adam Sandler, like, nah, you know, here he is trying to be, you know, serious, and you know, he's gonna go back to doing another, you know, low down, you know. And Eddie Murphy is like, oh, that's why you don't see comedy films in the race. They don't take, you know, it's like, it's a whole, you know, with the exception of Melissa McCarthy got nominated for Bridesmaids, you know, it's not that often, you know, a comedic performance garners that Oscar attention. You know, they have to look at you in a whole new light. Like, you know, Robin Williams winning for Good Will Hunting. I'm not sure if he already started that when he did Good Morning Vietnam and he did Awakenings, you know, and then he wins for Good Will Hunting. So he had already shown that, like, hey, I can play serious. I can turn off the charm, you know. So I think when it comes to Spielberg, it's more like, at that time, it was like, let's see if you can do this consistently, and everybody, and at the same time, because most of that cast were newcomers, it's hard for them to say, oh, we're just gonna bless all these newcoming folks, with awards, as opposed, especially when you're going up against a Meryl Streep, and I don't know who was nominated that year, anybody else that has, a good rep, so like it takes a lot for somebody coming out the gate, like a Lupita coming out, her first film and winning an Oscar, for play, or Jennifer Hudson, you have to be like over sensational,
You have to be, it has to be undeniable. Like I remember when, you and I, Wilson, we had a long conversation around Jamie Foxx back in the day over Ray. And I remember seeing Ray early at the Congressional Black Caucus, and I walked out the door. I was like, nobody's going to beat that dude. There's not another performance this year that's going to top what Jamie Foxx has done. And ultimately he won. I mean, I think it has to be such a slam dunk. Like you've got to, like that. We don't have a lot of slam dunk winners, Wilson. I'm talking about people you see them and it's undeniable. Like, come on, man.
And the minute you saw him play Lincoln, like game over. Now it's like, I just want to be one of the top 5 to get nominated. We know we're not. Daniel Day-Lewis is playing Abe Lincoln. Game over.
Daniel Day-Lewis is next level. That dude has 3 Oscars, man, and we know that there are only 5 people in history that have won 3, and that's why I said that little club, that exclusive club. I think about people like Mahershala Ali, Saoirse Ronan. These young people who have 2. You think about people like De Niro, Denzel, Hanks. There's a gang of people, like really strong actors that have 2 Oscars, man. In order to crack that 3rd one, you got to have performance. It's got to be timing. It's got to be somebody is like, okay, we got to open the door and let this person into the club. Daniel Day-Lewis, man, with My Left Foot, there will be blood. And then Lincoln, that dude, man, when people talk about greatest actors of a generation, that's one of the greatest actors of our generation right there, who doesn't get doesn't get to play.
And right now we think about who's the one that's been nominated so far a lot and hasn't won it yet. Currently, it's Bradley Cooper. He's the one that's been getting the most nominations. Denzel, every 3 or 4 years he'll do a film that like, okay, who would this be? Denzel's got 2, but he's got 1 supporting, 1 lead. Tom Hanks has 2, but he's got back-to-back, which is the rare. It's for those who got 2 Oscars, it's rare. Like Mahershala Ali, 2 in 3 years, that's rare.
But two supporting actors, and again, let's be fair here. Denzel Washington lost for Malcolm X. He lost for Fences. And that one to me really stings the worst, Wilson. Because he lost that one to Casey Affleck. Like the first one he lost was to Al Pacino, who had been a 6-time nominee, and they thought Al would never get another shot. I mean, I swear to you that I think he's better, but I understand it can swallow you lost to Al. Losing to Casey?
Yeah.
Man, that stung, bruh. Denzel had tears in his eyes sitting there. I know it stung.
Because here's the thing. Sometimes, and I spoke to somebody about this regarding the Oscars, there are performances that get an extra weight to it because of who's playing that performance. And then there are people who you don't know, and it's the performance that stands out. Have you get anybody else playing Fences, and are they in the same range? You get anybody else playing that role that Casey Affleck played, and they still will probably get a nomination. Because think about it, it's Casey Affleck. No one goes in there thinking like, oh, it's Casey Affleck. But when you see the performance, that's when you say, that's a performance. So you look.
Look at Charles's face.
Because think about it. You say Fences, and yes, it's Denzel. So he gets that extra value in there. But take Denzel out of Fences. You put somebody else in there. Do they may get the nomination, but do they get the win?
Okay, okay, wait a minute, Wilson, hold that thought. So one of the things that I heard people criticize Denzel Washington for in Fences was, it was a play. Didn't stop Viola Davis from winning an Oscar, though, for the same movie. But I was going to ask you, but hold on a second. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is coming out in 2 months. Same situation. August Wilson play, produced by Denzel Washington. I'm already seeing our good friend Clayton Davis talk about, oh my God, Chadwick Boseman. Ooh, dude. If there's a performance, and again, there was a performance in Fences that won an Oscar. Why was Denzel's performance denied when Viola won? And they were equally on similar footing to me in that movie.
Here's it, like I said before, like a lot of it also goes to politics. Viola, we thought she should have been the lead, but enough people in her camp said go support her. And there's a strong likeness to Viola Davis that they wanted her to win. They wanted to give her an Oscar. Like I said, take anybody else playing in that role. It's like, oh, Viola's on that trajectory right now. That's like, oh, especially if you're coming out during Oscar season, you're there. It's like anybody doing a movie, like right now, the talk is Anthony Hopkins and the father, Francis McDormand. I haven't seen the movies yet, and you're just throwing out their names.
Nomadland is good, Wilson. Nomadland is good.
But I saw an independent film recently at a festival that's a little bit similar. And I don't know whether he knows the actress, whatever. It's a little bit of similarities in there. And it's not going to get the same play. You put another actress in No Man Land, and how far does it get? It's Frances McDormand. She's very revered. She's got 2 Oscars, 2 Best Actress Oscars. So she too will be going for number 3. She too will be going for number 3. So there's a lot of politics that come into play when it's about like, oh, is it a performance that knocks everybody out of the box? That's the question. Is it a film that knocks everybody out of the box, or how many? And then there's the politics that come into play with this stuff. Oh, we got it. A female director. I don't know what country she's from, so I don't want to say it differently.
Oh, Chloe Zhao. Yeah, China.
So you're gonna have first Asian director, yada yada. All that stuff plays into factor.
Right.
As opposed to the performance itself. Like I haven't seen it yet. I'm hearing Vanessa Kirby, who had a film that played at the Venice Film Festival that Netflix picked up. Now, I think they picked it up because of the performance. We're not talking like a lot of people don't know who Vanessa Kirby is. So to my knowledge, she's the girl that's been on The Crown and did the movie with did Hobbs and Shaw. So she's not somebody that's like, whereas Saoirse Ronan, obviously she's been nominated a number of times. So anything she does, it's like, oh, it's Saoirse Ronan.
She's won 2 Oscars, man.
She's not. She's not won. She hasn't won an Oscar yet. Saoirse
Ronan.
She has not won an Oscar yet.
Hold on a second.
You can check it out. So,
But speaking to the point, though, when Chadwick Boseman is a purely political move, because they're talking about a man who's playing a role funded by Denzel Washington. He's passed on, and so this is also posthumous.
You're mentioning politics. We have yet to see it. We're dropping these names here without seeing the movie yet. That's the whole point. Like we're dropping these names here, without seeing the movie yet. And there's a lot of films out there, a lot of independent films. But the problem is they don't have us talking about them because we're not, the more we say Chadman and Viola, it gets people talking. It's the wag the dog story. You let everybody else drop their name and people will become interested. Whereas John Doe, who's in this small film and probably gave a great performance, but because if the film is being distributed by a company that doesn't have the resources, doesn't have the publicist to contact as many people, it goes by the wayside, and you may get, and its only hope is Independent Spirit Awards or something like that. But there's a lot of films out there. It just needs, a talk. I think back to Melissa Leo, who got nominated for Frozen. That took a lot of work. I remember she got chastised because she had to put out her own ad to get out there. She put up her own ad, put up money, her own money to put, to place herself. She bet on herself, and it worked to get a nomination. And she started to get roles after that.
Right.
So there's a lot that goes into it in terms of seeing a movie and getting people to talk about it.
All right. Excuse me. I stand corrected. Wilson is absolutely right. She's a 4-time Oscar nominee, but she has not won. So my apologies, Wilson. You were right, my friend.
That's why we have him on the show.
Hey, man, my thing is if Wilson Morales says it, man, I should believe him, but sometimes since he messes up CMB and some other stuff, and he can't just come off the top of his head real quick. Wilson is good. Like if we were talking about we were hip hop artists, I'm good in the cipher, right? Because I can kind of think real quick. Wilson has got to write all his rhymes. Wilson ain't good, man, in the cipher, man, where he can just kick it with everybody else.
But his rhymes would be just as good.
His rhymes is tight. Wilson's rhymes is tight. They fresh, they entertaining, they sell. But Wilson ain't good like in the cipher, like freestyle Wilson.
Listen,
before we move on, because we were talking about Spielberg as getting shut out.
We're talking about Spielberg, and there's a lot of politics behind Spielberg, from what I've heard.
Maybe I'm thinking the contemporary to Spielberg that we have today would be probably Ryan Coogler, who also has done some great work, but just isn't getting the recognition.
No, it's not the same. Not the
First,
same.
Ryan Coogler has done 3 films,
No, it's not the same. Spielberg did Jaws. Jaws was epic. Jaws would have been $1 billion film if we were talking about in today's money. Then you followed it up with Close Encounters. Then you follow that up with Raiders. I mean, he was doing mega blockbusters and then decided I wanted to be in the serious space and do something. And I think that was the difference, that it took people a while to understand and respect Spielberg as an artist who could kind of produce these big films, but also tell these small, intimate stories. And you realize, Wilson, he had a bomb late in the 80s. I forget, something about the Something Son, the story that focused on a little kid. That movie that was not a blockbuster for Steven Spielberg.
It's not easy. You said Ryan Coogler, and you're like, okay, Ryan Coogler did Fruitvale Station. It was a critically acclaimed film, and that was good. It was no moneymaker, it got him attention. He then got 2 IP properties, which was Creed, which already comes in with a built-in audience because it's the Rocky franchise, and it brings in everybody. Stallone's involved. They're like, so that's moneymaker right there. And then because of the success of that, he gets Black Panther, another IP property. And through his credit, he directed it well enough and had good performances. A lot of it falls on him. I want to see what's his next film that has nothing to do with an IP property that, like, hey, I want to see it because I know what you can do as a director. Can the story sell? Can your direction sell? It's like you got a lot of guys out there that like, become names, whether you're a director or a actor because of an IP property. Look how many people became famous just by being in a Marvel film, but when they get their own lead role outside of Marvel, they can't sell it.
Well, that's where I was going. Is that at his next film after he doing these 2 big blockbusters, is it going to be Schindler List level for him, or is it going to be something along the lines of The Color Purple? So either way, they're both successful.
Are we talking about? Spielberg's next film is going to be West Side Story.
No, I'm talking about
Coogler's next film is probably going to be Black Panther 2. I mean, he's not going to do anything before Black Panther 2.
And we don't really know that. Obviously, that's a whole nother level and a whole nother conversation we don't really need to get into now because it's like, okay, what does Marvel do? Do they replace Chad? Are they letting enough time go by before they think about replacing Chad? At the end of the day, this is business. As much as the audience want to say, you got to rest, let him be. It's like, okay, this is business. You made $1 billion off the first one. Do it after another one. You don't kill off a character. We've had plenty of Spider-Mans, plenty of Supermans, plenty of Batmans. This is a business, and that's how it goes, So, I'd like to see him do something different where it stands out as opposed to like, don't just sit on and wait for Black Panther 2 because, okay, that's going to do well. What's your next one after that? Look at the guy, look at Sean Levy. He did Night at the Museum 1 and 2. Those were highly successful.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can't think of anything else, but he's also the executive producer of Stranger Things to his credit. So like there's a number of those individual directors who have done blockbuster movies. No one talks about Tim Story and how well he did with the Fantastic Four. They weren't critically acclaimed, but they made money.
Man, bro, you know what, man? I love you. I love you too much to have this argument, on air. Because I remember Sean Edwards came on here and tried to say something similar, and I was like,
Give them their respect.
Tim Story. I've never met him. I've never interviewed him. I'm sure he's a fine technician for what he does. His films to me, and this is another show and another conversation we'll have, so I'm not going to really go into detail, but I talk to you all the time, Wilson, and you and I have had this conversation that filmmakers their films have a certain style. Like, a Spike Lee film when you see it, right? It has a certain style, a certain aesthetic to it. A Spielberg movie, a Coppola movie, a Scorsese movie, a Ryan Coogler movie. Antoine Fuqua, his films have a certain aesthetic. Ava DuVernay, they all have a certain aesthetic. Tim Story's movies to me are like the equivalent of some white paint on a wall that's just fresh and you watch it dry. There's his films to me have no style. There's no particular substance.
No, they don't have to. At the end of the day, it's work. You got a number of directors out there that have been doing film for a number of years. I'm talking about white directors. And at some point, they'll get nominated, like you said before, the guy from the guy who directed Green Book. He's done a number of films, and obviously you're like, oh, you're thinking about something. Tim Story eventually, you don't have to make, sometimes people just want to work. At the end of the day.
Okay, no, and that's fine. I was going to say, this is not about quality, Wilson, right? Tyler Perry's films have a style. I know what a Tyler Perry film looks like. I know what, all these other auteurs, these directors, and that's why there's a difference between being a director and an auteur. An auteur is someone whose films have a certain style. They kind of, from an educational standpoint. Tim Story's films, and you're right, he may just have the, kind of a mindset that I'm a working director. You give me a product, I'll work it out. You have a lot of television directors who are like that, who just, I'll direct anything. Just give me something. But that's my only, quote unquote, if there was as you would say, a knock, it would be a knock that his films just are personality-less to me. Like, anybody could direct a movie that Tim Story directs. But everybody can't direct a movie that's like.
I don't know if it's fair to say anybody could do it, because you still have to work with the personalities that are on that set, and not everybody can handle Ice Cube, can handle Kevin Hart. So I look at Tim's Story, and maybe his aesthetic is green because his money. His
aesthetic is green.
But they're working directors. Here's the thing: you got Malcolm Lee. Malcolm Lee had a Grand Slam with Girls Trip. But prior to that, obviously, his first film was Best Man. Then he did Undercover Brother. Then he did a number of other films, and he was he continues to be a working director. And that's what I like about, sometimes you got a lot of directors nowadays that want to fast track their careers by making statement films. And if that's their thing, because that's their passion, they want to do what's happening now. I was like, yeah. But then you also have directors that are like, listen, I just want to tell a story. I want to direct a film. I want to be given that opportunity to direct a $85 to $100 million budget movie because I have the skill set to do so. Like Antoine Fuqua, not many directors are being hired to direct these big budgeted movies because, you don't have there's people that don't have the faith that they can do it, and I was like, hey, this, even now, I just put out a list of 50 movies since the start of October of this month to next year. They are out and are coming out. The whole point of that is you have a lot of talent out there, directors and talent who a lot of people are not aware of, and it's on the site, and you can look at it down the road and like, granted, we're going to always know the Viola movies, the Denzel movies, but, you got a movie coming out called Spell, starring Omari Hardwick and Loretta Devine, directed by a black director out of England, Mark Ponderay. He's done other films before, but no one pays attention because we don't have to love, and because the media is that, I won't say at fault, but if we don't plug our own individuals, no one's gonna give them that shot. Sometimes people need a little bit of a say, of an article here and there for people to pay attention. To
right.
be given, and there's got to be a synergy, between the black press and the talent, because when we don't talk about them and we're waiting for EW or Vanity Fair to put them on the map, and then we hop on the bandwagon, you're like, no, we should be able to be discovering them. Say, hey, take a look at this individual. I think back, and I always say Issa Rae is a great example. She had a show, Awkward Black Girls, or that was played on YouTube. It grew an audience. She took that audience and got into meetings, and look where she's at now because of the audience. Same thing like Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry went in there. Tyler Perry has that Dolomite model. Listen, I've got a show that people are coming out in droves to see.
Right.
You do not like it, and people may get cringeworthy because I'm wearing a dress, but I'm filling in seats. Theaters are packing them up. Look, give me a movie. And I go back to this. When his first movie came out, they underestimated what he can do. They thought it's it'll make $5 million. There's no big name, and it does 20. There's one thing when you're off by $1 to $5 million, but when you're off by $15 million, and then they continue to be off for the next 5 to 10 films he made, you're like, okay, we're not going to underestimate him. He
Right.
showed us we got an audience, and that's because he has an audience, and people need to celebrate. It may not be perfect, but there's an audience. We're on the minority when it comes to certain filmmakers and talent.
All right, Wilson, stop. You got the final word, man. We're over time, man. So tell people where they can read your content, man.
Find me over at Black Film and TV, which is the same words you use for all the social media outlets. If you want to see me, you want to find me personally, my personal Instagram is Wilson Morales Film, but definitely look at Black Film and TV.
All right, and Charles Kirkland, where can people read your content?
My content can be found on thefilmgordon.com. That's
that's the final word right there, man. As we tell you guys in closing every week, please see something good at the movies. Tune in next week. Wilson will finish his original point and pick it up exactly where he left off. Before I was like, Wilson, time out, bro. Stop, man.
I got a wealth of knowledge. What can I say?
Hey, you do, my brother. All right, man. On behalf of the Cornell Red Raiders, go Cornell, Wilson Morales. And on behalf of the Go-Go scene in the
Correction, it's the Cornell Big Red.
y'all are no longer doing, no?
Red Raiders.
Y'all just no red, just Big Red. All right.
Big Red.
Watch this. My bad. Peace, man. We'll see you guys next week, man. Take care.